Lesson 1A, Review of Fractional Operations. Content objective, students will be able to find the sum, difference, product, and quotient of fractions. Language objective, students will be able to explain verbally the essential steps to solving problems with fractions. 2, read fraction answers correctly. Why am I learning this? This is important for solving equations. So we are going to start with adding and subtracting with uncommon denominators. So we have 1/2 plus 2/5. So what we need to do is change the fractions so that they have a common denominator by multiplying by a giant 1. So the lowest common denominator of 2 and 5 is 10. And so what we want to do is make two equivalent fractions that have a denominator of 10. So to change the denominator of 2 to 10, what we need to do is multiply it by 5. What we multiply the denominator by, we also need to multiply the numerator. And this is where we get our giant 1. So 5 divided by 5 is 1. And so we know from the identity property of multiplication that anytime you multiply a number by 1, it does not change the value. And so therefore we are making an equivalent fraction to 1/2. So 1 times 5 is 5. 5 times 2 is 10. So we're going to multiply the numerator by 2. 2 times 2 is 4. So 5 plus 4 is 9, and our denominator is 10. A reminder to make sure that your fractions are reduced and proper. So number 1, I have 6 and 1/5 minus 1 and 2/3. So here the first thing we want to do is make these two mixed numbers into improper fractions. So I have 5 times 6, which is 30, plus 1 is 31, and our denominator is 5. 1 and 2/3, I have 3 times 1 is 3, plus 2 is 5, over our denominator of 3. Here we need to find the lowest common denominator, which is 15. So we have 5 times 3 is 15. And so again, what we multiply the denominator by, we need to multiply the numerator by the same number. So 31 times 3 is 93. 3 times 5 is 15. And so we need to multiply the numerator. 5 times 5 is 25. If we subtract 93 minus 25, we get 68. And if we turn this into a mixed number, we will get 4 and 8/15. And so just a quick reminder, when we are turning an improper fraction into a mixed number, this is a division problem. 68 divided by 15. So 15 goes into 68 4 times. 4 times 15 is 60. If we subtract, 68 minus 60 is 8. And so we end up with 4 and 8/15. Number 2, we have 4 and 2/7 minus negative 1/2. And so when we are subtracting, we need to remember that we need to add the opposite. And so we're going to turn the subtraction problem into an addition problem. And then the opposite of negative 1/2 is positive 1/2. So again, please remember when we are subtracting that we need to add the opposite. So we need to go ahead and turn 4 and 2/7 into an improper fraction. So you have 7 times 4, which is 28, plus 2 is 30, and that's going to be over 7. 1/2 is proper, so we can leave it as is. So now we need to make sure that we find a common denominator, and the lowest common denominator of 7 and 2 is 14. 7 times 2 is 14, 30 times 2 is 60. 2 times 7 is 14, 1 times 7 is 7. We can add across. 60 plus 7 is 67. Our denominator is 14, and if we divide and turn that into a mixed number, we are going to get 4 and 11/14. Next, we have negative 3/7 minus negative 9/4. This is again a subtraction problem, so you need to remember to add the opposite. So our subtraction problem is going to become an addition problem. The opposite of 9/4 is positive 9/4. So again, add the opposite. So I have negative 3/7 plus 9/4. We need to find the lowest common denominator, which is 28. Make sure that you do not lose that negative when you rewrite it. Alright, so you have 7 times 4, which is 28, 3 times 4, which is 12. 4 times 7, which is 28, and 9 times 7, which is 63. So now we need to be careful because we do have a negative 12 plus a 63. And so we have negative 12 plus 63. And so last year we talked about what do we have more of, positive or negatives. We do have more positives. And so then we ask ourselves how many more, which means that we do need to subtract. So 63 minus 12 is 51. We said it was positive, so it's going to be 51 over 28. And if we turn that into a mixed number, we get 1 and 23 over 28. All right. Number 4, we have 8/5 plus negative 11/6. So we need to first find the lowest common denominator, which is 30. Again, don't lose that negative when you rewrite this. And so you have 5 times 6, which is 30, and 8 times 6, which is 48. Our other fraction, you have 6 times 5 is 30, 11 times 5 is 55. Again, we need to add 48 plus negative 55. So you have 48, negative 55. What do you have more of, positive or negative? And you have more negatives, so your answer will be negative. How many more means we need to subtract. And so 55 minus 48 is 7, so we have negative 7/30. Number 5, we have 11 plus negative 2 and 7/15. So we need to write 11 as an improper fraction, so we're going to write that as 11 over 1. We'll turn negative 2 and 7/15 into an improper fraction. And again, don't lose your negative when you rewrite it. Here we do not have common denominators, so our lowest common denominator is 15. So you have 1 times 15, and then 11 times 15, which is 165. Our other fraction, it already has a denominator of 15, so we're going to leave it as it is. We're going to add 165 plus negative 37, so 165. I have negative 37. We ask ourselves, what do we have more of, positive or negative? And we have more positive. How many more means we need to subtract. So if we subtract 165 minus 37, you end up with 128. And if we turn that into a mixed number, you're going to get 8 and 8/15. All right, number 6, we have negative 1 and 1/4 minus 1/12. And so we're going to turn them into improper fractions first. All right, we're going to go ahead, because this is a subtraction problem, we're going to add the opposite. And so here we're going to add the opposite of 1/12 is negative 1/12. And now we're going to go ahead and turn negative 1 and 1/4 into an improper fraction. And so here I would have negative 5/4 plus negative 1/12. And so here we want to find the lowest common denominator. And the mistake some people will make is you will want to multiply 4 times 12 to get your lowest common denominator. Now, you will eventually get the correct answer. However, your numbers are going to start getting larger, which may lead to you making more mistakes. And so here, the lowest common denominator of these two numbers is actually 12. And so what we need to do is, ask ourselves 4 times what is 12, which is 3. And so then we have 3 times negative 5, which is negative 15. And then we get to go ahead and leave negative 1/12 as it is, since the denominator was already 12. All right, here we have negative 15 plus negative 1. And so they're both negative, becoming more negative. And so we would end up having negative 16/12. And as a mixed number, you have negative 1 and 4/12, which can also be simplified down to negative 1 and 1/3. All right, moving on to multiplication. So when you multiply, some of you were taught just multiply across. So I have 5 times 9, which is 45, 6 times 10, which is 60. And then after you multiplied, then you simplified. And so you had to divide by 15 to simplify all the way down, and you would get 3/4. Now, we are going to tell you that a better idea, better strategy would be to cross cancel And this means that you're going to reduce before you multiply. So same problem, 5 6 times 9 tenths. And so we're going to look across and we're going to see if we can simplify. And so 5 can go into 5 once, 5 can go into 10 twice. You have 6 and 9. They are both divisible by 3. So 6 divided by 3 is 2. 9 divided by 3 is 3. We can now multiply the numerators. 1 times 3 is 3. 2 times 2 is 4. And so you'll notice we get the same answer, but our numbers are going to stay smaller and you're less likely to make a mistake. So here we go, simplify. 7/8 times 5 over 21. So first thing we're going to do is see if we can cross cancel, which we can. So we have 7 goes into 7 once, 7 goes into 21 3 times. We don't have anything besides 1 that can go into 5 and 8, so we are going to go ahead and multiply across. So you have 1 times 5, which is 5, and 8 times 3, which is 24. Here we have 2 and 1/4 times 3 and 1/3. Going to go ahead and turn those mixed numbers into improper fractions. And so I end up with 9/4 times 10/3. I'm going to look to see if I can cross cancel, which I can. Both divisible by 3. So 3 goes into 9 3 times. 3 goes into 3 once. You have 10 and 4, which are divisible by 2. So 4 divided by 2 is 2. 10 divided by 2 is 5. Multiply across. 3 times 5 is 15. 2 times 1 is 2. And if we turn this into a mixed number, we're going to get 7.5. Number 11. So here we have a negative, so we need to be careful. So first thing I suggest that you do is figure out, is your answer going to be positive or negative? We talked about if the signs are the same, both positive or both negative, that your answer will be negative. Here you have one negative and one positive, and so our answer will be negative. So that's the first thing I would do, is write down the negative so you don't forget that at the end. Then we're going to look and see if we can cross cancel, which we cannot. And so we're going to go ahead and multiply across. 1 times 5 is 5. 2 times 3 is 6. So the biggest mistake there is going to be forgetting that negative. All right, next, again, we're going to look. I have a negative times a negative. The signs are the same, so my answer will be positive. I will turn these into improper fractions. I'm going to look to see if I can cross cancel. So these are both divisible by 2, so 6 divided by 2 is 3. 4 divided by 2 is 2. We're going to multiply across. You have 3 times 17, which is 51. 5 times 2, which is 10. Turning that into a mixed number, I get 5 and 1/10. Excuse me. Here I have a negative times a negative. Again, the signs are the same, so my answer will be positive. I'm going to write negative 2 as a fraction, so I have negative 2 over 1. I'm going to look to see if I can cross cancel, which I cannot. So I'm going to go ahead and do 2 times 4, which is 8, and 1 times 3, which is 3. And writing that as a mixed number, I get 2 and 2/3. Alright, so we're going to finish our review by talking about how to divide fractions. So when you are dividing fractions, you need to remember to flip the second fraction over, which is called the reciprocal, and then you are going to multiply. So our example, we have 4/5 divided by 2/3. So we are going to multiply by the reciprocal, so flip the second and multiply. Look to see if you can cross cancel, which you can. They are both divisible by 2. And then you will multiply across like we just practiced with multiplication. So 2 times 3 is 6, 5 times 1 is 5. Writing that as a mixed number, I get 1 and 1/5. Alright, number 14. So we're going to go ahead, multiply by the reciprocal, so flip the second and multiply. Look to see if you can cross cancel. These are both divisible by 3. So 3 goes into 3 9 3 times. 3 goes into 3 once. We cannot cross cancel the 7 and 2, so we're going to go ahead and multiply. 7 times 1 is 7, 3 times 2 is 6, and if you turn that into a mixed number, you get 1 and 1/6. 15, I'm going to turn 10 into an improper fraction, 10 over 1. I'm going to turn 2 and 1/2 into an improper fraction. I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal, so flip the second, multiply. See if we can cross cancel, which we can. So 5 goes into 10 twice, 5 goes into 5 once, 2 times 2 is 4. All right, number 16. Just like with multiplication, we have a negative divided by a negative. The signs are the same, so our answer is going to be positive. I'm going to turn these negative 1 and 1/2 into an improper fraction, so I would get negative 3/2. I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal, so I'm going to flip the negative 12/7. I'm going to look to see if I can cross cancel. 3 goes into 3 once, 3 goes into 12 4 times. I'm going to go ahead and multiply. 1 times 7 is 7, 2 times 4 is 8. Number 17, I have a positive times a negative, and so when the signs are opposite, then the answer will be negative, so I would write that first. Then I'm going to turn my mixed numbers into improper fractions, and then I will multiply by the reciprocal. Look to see if we can cross cancel, which we can. 10 goes into 10 once and once. Multiply across, and we would get negative 11/23. All right, and our last problem, number 18. I have a negative divided by a negative, so it is going to be a positive answer. I'm going to turn negative 3 and 1/2 into an improper fraction, and then I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal, so I'm going to flip 7/2 into 2/7. We're going to look to see if we can cross cancel. 2 goes into 10 5 times, 2 goes into 2 once. I'm going to multiply across. It is a proper fraction, so that is my answer, 11/35.